There are two ways that Genesis integrates with QuickBooks. I'll demo both of those methods. I'm going to go to Tools and QuickBooks Export. This message is telling me that QuickBooks is not currently running. If it were running, I would not be getting this message as long as I had the Genesis integration feature installed. Now, we can do this integration without the Genesis integration feature installed. It just works differently. I'll show you how that. I'll show you both ways. So this is telling me either QuickBooks is not installed and/or I don't have the integration tool or feature installed. So I'll go ahead and click OK, and it will open up this export screen. The first two fields I'll need to fill out, and I've already done it here, is the bank account name that exists in QuickBooks, and it's important that this account name be in QuickBooks as a bank account type and that it's spelled exactly right. You don't have to use premium as your bank account name. It could be escrow account or whatever you like or currently have, but it needs to be here just like it's there. When you type this in one time, you will not have to type it in again. It will remember what I type in, and if I change it, it will remember what I change it to. We also enter the transaction account name, and my example that I'll do now, I'm going to call it remittance. I think so I can call it remitted premium. So type in remitted premium, and it will remember that the next time I come in. So then I'll go and I'll pick a date through the calendar feature, or I can type in a manual date. So I'm going to go back a little ways. And click recalculate. The check date is the date that will appear in QuickBooks as the check date. So normally I think if I'm going to export data from Genesis to QuickBooks, maybe for transactions done yesterday in my agency, I would probably put yesterday's date as the check date on the QuickBooks, but that you have control over that. For this example, I'll leave today's date in there. The Genesis this feature went out to Genesis receipting feature, and it pulled in all the transactions that were receipted during this time period. In company setup, you can tell Genesis whether each company needs to be mailed a check or whether they're going to draft our account, and you can tell it whether to batch all the transactions for that time period for that company or not batch. So this example, Progressive is going to draft the agent's account each time for each payment that was made, whereas National General is going to draft the agent's account one time for the payments taken and processed that one day. So let me show you. If I do Control A, I'm sorry, I can't do Control A. That's agency setup. If I go to company setup, I'll just show you an example of one. Here I can tell it in company setup for each company whether it's a check or a draft. I can also mark it as a remittance batch or not. It's a batch or not. Now, a couple of things about this screen. If I want to or need to edit this amount, I can do that before I send it over to QuickBooks. I can also exclude any one of these, and it'll recalculate my totals. And I can add anything I'd like to add down here. And it'll add it to the total, and it will import it or export it over to QuickBooks. So I can edit, and I can add, and I can exclude. If I do not have the QuickBooks integration feature installed, or I don't have QuickBooks open, and I try to export it directly to QuickBooks, then it's going to tell me, like in this example, QuickBooks is not running on this machine. But it would do the same thing if I didn't have the feature installed. So what I'll demonstrate first is getting my payments in for that day, creating the export file. It's going to clear everything out that's exporting, and it will not be there anymore except for the one that I excluded. Even if I do a research, I would have to go look and see in prior transactions where I've exported those. This is telling me that I've created this file in my Genesis Eddy QuickBooks folder, and here's the file name that it's created. So then what I'll do is open up QuickBooks and import that file into QuickBooks. After QuickBooks has opened, I'll go to File, Utilities, Import, and the file type that I'll import from my options is the second one down. It's the IIF files. Click on that. It'll take me to where I've last browsed to find these files. So the first time you do this, you may have to go to your Genesis, the folder name that it's put it in, and click QuickBooks. When I'm here, I like to look at details so I can see the most recent file. I can delete these files, but they're staying in there currently as an archive. So I picked the file that I've just created, click OK or Open, and the data has been imported. If I want to look at the data, I go to my register, choose the account that I told it a moment ago I wanted to import it to, the banking account called Premium. And we can see all the transactions that we saw just a moment ago from Genesis. Some of them are drafts, so they have nothing here, and some of them need to be printed. So it says to print. And it pulled in the account name that I told it to earlier, so that could be different for you, and of course all my amounts. So that's pulling it in through the way that does not require the official Genesis QuickBooks integration. That's creating the export file and importing it. So to go back and show you the other way, I open QuickBooks export feature. This time it's not going to give me the message that says QuickBooks is not running, because QuickBooks is running. And not only is QuickBooks running, I have the integration feature installed. So the first time I do this, in this case, I would also choose which bank account. This time, however, because Genesis is integrated with QuickBooks in a different way, it knows what bank accounts are available from the QuickBooks company that I have open down here. So it knows that Premium or Operating are my two bank accounts. I picked the one I'd like to use. By the same token, it knows the transaction account names that are in there. So if I want to use Remitted Premium again like I did earlier, this is pulling from the list inside of QuickBooks. I'm not having to make sure this is right so much. So I make those choices just like I did earlier, and it will remember them just like we said it would earlier. I'll use some different dates. Recalculate. And it's putting today's date. Now I would like to use 1/17 of this year as my check date, because let's go recalculate if that changes that. The reason I want to use that check date is because in a minute to show you this, I want to be able to see. So it recalculated it and put the right dates down here based on what I have up here. It'll be easier for us to look at it in QuickBooks in a minute and not get these transactions confused with the ones I imported just a moment ago. So it's imported 17 transactions. I've already explained. Genesis knows based on company setup who needs a check, who's going to be drafting our account. It knows which companies are batching the transactions, and it knows which companies are not batching the transaction. Once I do that, and also like I said earlier, I can edit any of these amounts, and I can go down here and I can add another amount, another transaction, and I can exclude anything I'd like to exclude. When I'm finished, now I'll be able to export to QuickBooks. And by the way, if there were any transactions that did not match up, any company names in QuickBooks coming from here, we would get a message about that. Your payees need to match too. So if I had Travelers Insurance Company in Genesis, I would need to have Travelers Insurance Company in QuickBooks in exactly the same way as a vendor and not some other category type. So once that's gone, like it did earlier, it cleared out of here. I would go to QuickBooks, look in my register in the Premium account, and I should see transactions now from the 17th. One slight difference, just because of the integration different type, these are saying draft, where up here it's blank. But these say draft and these are to print. Everything else is really the same. So hopefully this was helpful. If you have any suggestions about ways to make this better, we want to hear those. And if you have any questions, please let us know. Thanks so much.